It's the info. It's the man with the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. It's the man with the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. It's the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. We got the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info man. You can call him information info man. Kicking knowledge all over this nation. Win, lose, or draw. You can bring your hate team, but if you want to win, please don't bring your debate team. We talking Japanese shogun, Aztecs, Olmecs, and African Dogon.
Man, welcome to my YouTube channel once again. I want to say to everybody out there that I appreciate your support. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you're new to my channel. Hit the bell for notification because I definitely appreciate that. What I want to do right now, I know that everybody has celebrated Christmas, December 25th, as we have been culturally conditioned to believe that that was the birth of Christ. And I know that everybody is getting ready to gear up for New Year's coming the next week. And everyone's getting ready to gear up for 2019 that we're getting ready to go in 2019 very soon. What I want to do, I've got a video here that's very powerful. It does question whether Jesus existed. It does question a lot of these issues because it looks at religion and different cultures and how they all sort of have these similarities. What are these similarities? Well, to be quite honest with you, the Bible itself, along with many other religious beliefs or systems, it all comes out of African spirituality. They've been borrowing pieces of our ancestry, black people. They've been taking pieces here and pieces there and creating these stories to confuse us, to keep us in steady confusion. So for example, a lot of us believe that Jesus Christ was born December 25th. I'm here to tell you that that may not necessarily be true. First of all, let's look at, now I got this book here. I'm going to let you know where I'm referencing some of my sources. It's always important to reference sources. This is the African People and European Holidays Mental Genocide. Let me let you see that. There you go. And also, there's another book that you should check out, which is called Stolen Legacies. That's a powerful book. It talks about how the Greeks were originally members of secret societies, or not secret societies, secret schools, Kemetic science schools. That's where the Greeks got a lot of their knowledge, and they came up with their philosophies. They borrowed, stole. They were students in the system, of the Kemetic system, and that's how they got a lot of their knowledge. Even though most scholars, European scholars, won't tell you this. Do your research, but get that book, Stolen Legacies. Also, get the book They Came Before Columbus, 800 BC. by Ivan van Sertima. He talks about how Africans were traveling over here to this world we call North America, America, for years, trading gold and silver with the native people that were already here. The Africans knew how to travel. They had a sense of the globe. They had a sense of the system, okay? Check out, read up material on the Dogon. The Dogon they were able to chart the Sirius, the dwarf star, the white dwarf star, Sirius B, Sirius C, and they were doing it within their own technology, not the technology that we use today. Pyramids were built from the top down, not bottom up. Very interesting stuff. The Dogon talk about black people from space, or black beings, teaching them the knowledge, which is why I say all the time that we come from dark matter. Black holes, which are made of melanin. The Big Bang Theory created this universe, created this world that we live in. It's all melanin, and that's what we are, black people. So where I'm getting at with this, and the video is going to touch on this, is that everything that we know about religion is nothing but substances that have been borrowed from African spirituality. You're looking at it dead in your face. What the Europeans have done is that they've used a white image of Jesus to make us think that Jesus is white and make us believe that they are gods, so that when they enslave us, we'll adhere to whatever the doctrination is. And religion in general, is a form of social control. You're trying to conform people to behave in a certain way by creating a dogma that is centered around the fact that there is hell and then there's a heaven. So if you do good, you go to heaven. If you do bad, you go to hell. That keeps people in a sort of spiritual and a behavioral check. Okay? Now, I'm not here to piss on anybody's religion, whether you're Muslim, you're Christian, you're Hebrew Israelite. This is not what I'm trying to do. I'm simply trying to put out the information to inform people, to open up minds. I want you to look at this video that I have here, and you be the judge for yourself. Take the information in this video, do your own research, empower yourself, and do your own research, because if you do your own research, you may be very surprised by what you may get out of this video and how it may open your mind. Let me tell you something right now. There's something I want to read to you out of this book that I have here. Let me see here. Let me see. Oh, here we go. Here we go, folks. So basically, the word Christmas, because I know we all celebrating Christmas, and I'm not a big celebrator of holidays in general. And the thing that always killed me about Christmas is that even though they say it's supposed to be about the birth of Christ, we seem to give Christ the second billing, and we seem to give this fictional character with a red suit the full billing. That's called Santa Claus, right? And then let me say this to you real quick. In European culture, particularly the Dutch, they have this character. They have a Santa Claus figure, and they have this character called Black Pete, Boise Pete, which is sort of their language. Boise Pete, Black Pete. Black Pete was basically a Moor who went around with Santa within Dutch European culture, helping Santa out, but he was an evil character, or was portrayed as evil. Kids were scared of Black Pete. Black Pete was a Moor. He was dressed up in old English type clothing, and it's a stereotype. It's a straight up blackface stereotype, because the people in the New Netherlands and people that are in Dutch culture, every year they have a celebration where they wear blackface. They wear these the outfit that Black Pete wore. They have these Afro kind of like wigs on, and they tell people that, oh, it's not racism, it's just the culture, right? And they won't get rid of this character. You have black people that live in the Dutch in these countries like New Netherlands, and I've even seen black children with their face like that. Now their argument is that that's the dirt and the dust from the chimney, but it is a caricature that goes all the way back. So I'm going to give you all a great reference. Check out Ethnic Notions. It talks about how they did caricatures of black people, destroying us through our image, which is why it is important for us to control our own media, our own image. Okay? So let me just read this. The word Christmas did not come on the scene until about 10 centuries ago. Okay? 10 centuries. That would be over 1,000 years. So says here 10 centuries. That is over 1,000 years after the birth of Christ. So there were all these centuries that had passed 1,000 years prior to the birth of Christ, in which the word Christmas came about. Okay? Now another thing I need to let you all know too, which is very important. The controversy over the birth of Jesus Christ. Now let us deal with the birth of Jesus Christ, which according to European culture, Europeans, it is supposed to have taken place on December 25th. Okay? First of all, the date December 25th was a commemoration in the ancient world long before Jesus was born as the birth date of Horus in Egypt, which is why I'm telling you now, everything that you've been reading in the Bible, in Christianity, is nothing but a offshoot of African spirituality. Like I said, read the book Stolen Legacy. Europeans have taken things that are from African spirituality, and they have twisted it and changed it to make it fit their narrative. They want you to believe that Jesus is a white man, and that you are to worship those who fit the image of the blue eyes and the blonde hair. Now, in the Bible, it does say that, because a lot of black people, a lot of us will say that, hey, Jesus was black. Okay, if he existed, Jesus was black. Well, in the Bible, it does say that Jesus had hair like wool and he had skin like bronze. Now, look at my skin right now. Okay? That looks like bronze. My skin looks like bronze. Okay? Pretty like Ali. So looks like bronze, right? So that doesn't look like a European. And my hair is kind of woolly, you know, little woolly here and there. So you got to ask yourself, if that is the case, why is it that the churches, and especially a lot of black churches early on, would have this depiction of Jesus, and you have a lot of black people that have a picture of Jesus in their house as a European figure, right? And there's some that would say that that was a created figure who comes from the term or the name, which is Christile, okay? That it was a collaboration between the pagans and various religious orders that came together and collaborated for these certain dates that we celebrate and for this character, this individual that we call Jesus. So you gotta ask yourself, why is it that we don't see a depiction of ourselves? Okay? Now let me move on with this and get into more of this before I get into this powerful video that you're going to be watching in just a moment, so bear with me. For many years now, this is another thing that people may not be aware of. They've been celebrating this birth situation on different dates. See, they've been manipulated. We've been manipulated, folks. We don't really know what time it is. We don't really know how old we are, what year we really were born. We don't really know what year we're really in, because I was listening to Brother Khalid Muhammad in a lecture say that they've been manipulating time through manipulating the calendar. They've been manipulating the calendar. There's 28 days in February. There's 31 days here. There's 30 days there. Why is that? Because somebody's been manipulating that calendar. We're not operating off of the true solar calendar that we should be operating off of. But let me read this here. For many years, there was much controversy over the existing date upon Christmas. So there were many arguments over the dates that Christmas should be celebrated. Eastern churches at Constantinople, the capital, which was the capital city, empire, celebrated the birth of Jesus, the visit of the wise men. Remember the wise men who followed the northern star? And like I said, the Dogon, they were able to discover these stars without any telescopes, okay? And the wise men, now, and this is another thing I must throw out there. They say that there were sheep that were flocking when they came upon Jesus in the stable. Guess what? Sheep don't flock in December. I believe sheep flock in spring, folks. Do your research. So that's why there's a lot of inconsistencies. So it says here, let me read this. The Eastern Church, Constantinople, the empire, celebrating the birth of Jesus, the visit of the wise men, and the baptism of Jesus on January 6th. So they gave a baptism of Jesus on January 6th, which is referred to in Western Church as the Feast of the Manifestation. Okay? This date is observed by Eastern Orthodox Church. So the Eastern Orthodox Church observes the birth and the baptism of Christ actually in January 6th. That's way after December 25th, okay? The dates is observed by Eastern Orthodox Church. Even to this day, some of the other dates that were celebrated throughout the 300 or so years before the finalization of December 25th were January 8th, February 2nd, March 25th, okay? We've got March 25th, April 19th, May 20th, September 29th, November 17th, and different dates in the month of August. In other words, they did not know which day Jesus was born. They did not know. They were jumping around with all these different dates. European bishops got together. I'm telling y'all the truth here. European bishops got together and said, look, all of this confusion about the birth of Jesus is going to be stopped. Stopped right now. Okay? I'm just giving y'all the knowledge here because this is some truism. And I want y'all to check out this video I got for you that's going to reinforce this. Okay? So they said this has got to stop. This is the day we have chosen See, they chose it. See, if somebody was born, look, I was born November 13th, 1969. At least I think that's when I was born. Because like I said, we really don't know what year we're in. They've been manipulating our calendars. But just for the purpose of this conversation, just bear with me, people. Everybody out there, I love you for supporting me, by the way. Peace out and shout out to everybody out there. Okay? If they had to choose a date, if you know when someone is born, if I know I was born November 13th, 1969, why would someone have to choose when I was born if that was the fact that that's when I was born? See, this is the game that they've been running on us, folks. So European bishops got together and said, look, we're going to stop all this confusion, okay? This is the day that we're going to choose, and we have the authority to do this, and that authority led them to enforce this. This was enforced by the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church enforced this as the final decision that December 25th would be the best date, since some Europeans were already celebrating on other dates. By the end of the 4th century CE, the Christian world, with the exception of the Eastern churches and possibly the Church of Ethiopia, the Ethiopian church, was celebrating Christmas on December 25th in the story of civilization. So that's what was going on, okay? Okay? Now, Christmas. Now, I hope y'all are hearing what I'm saying. This video that I got for you is powerful. Now, Christmas on the old plantation when black people were in slavery. Check this out. As regardless to Christmas in the antebellum slavery, Mother Jean Protector, born of slavery in Alabama in 1850, was 87 years old when interviewed, but recalled that old master would kill a hog and give us a piece of pork. We thought that was something, and the way Christmas lasted was according to the big sweet gum back log, what the slaves would cut and put in the fireplace. So this was something that they would cut and put in the fireplace. And when that fire would go out, that's when Christmas would be over for the slaves. They would have to go right back to what they had to do, and that's, working those fields. Okay? So according to the big sweet gum back log, let me read this again. I think I read it wrong the first time. Let me see. We thought that it was something in the way the slaves would cut and put the fireplace. When the logs burned out, so they would cut the logs, put them in the fireplace. When the logs ran out, that would be the end of Christmas for the slaves to be able to celebrate. So the logs would burn out and Christmas was over. In the speech of 1882, Frederick Douglass related his experience as a slave during Christmas season. He said the days between Christmas, the days and New Year's were allowed that slaves as holidays. Slaves were nothing to do but keep fires and look after stock. So basically, Frederick Douglass stated that in slavery, all black people were being used for was to start fires, keep things warm, look over the stock, which would be the animals, and that's it. And when those fires would burn out and the evening time would come, that would be it. So they didn't give us much to do, black folks. We damn sure weren't eating food and opening up presents and all of that. And another thing, too, people need to realize about Christmas is that there was an evil king who was called Nimrod. And Nimrod, if I'm not mistaken, he killed his mother. And out of his guilt for killing his mother, you have the tree concept. And he began to decorate trees and put gifts on those trees because he felt guilt for killing his mother. He was an evil individual. Okay? A lot of what we're celebrating when it comes to these holidays come out of paganism. A lot of it has got deep roots in paganism. So You know, I just want people to know that I'm not hating on anyone's religious beliefs. I'm simply bringing this information to you to say, do your research for yourself, understand what you're celebrating when it comes to holidays, understand what makes sense and what doesn't make sense around the issues of Jesus. Because if Jesus is a black man, hair like wool, skin like bronze like myself, why is it that the images in most of our churches in this country don't look that way? And if you look at the Bible, most of the illustrations in the Bible are people of European ancestry, when in fact many people in the Bible were people of African ancestry. When you look at the movie 300, that movie 300 was misleading. A lot of those Greeks in the 300 were of African ancestry. The Persians are of African ancestries, okay? A lot of the particular characters that were in the 300 were black men, but they don't tell you these things. You gotta do research. I remember Tony Brown's journal said, why can black people call themselves Greek? Because you have people that are in fraternities with the Greek letters. Well, Greek letters are actually, in the book Stolen Legacies, were stolen from African writings, okay? 2, there were African people or black people that lived in Athens 300 BC. So you had what you would call black Greeks. Just like in America, we call ourselves African Americans sometimes. Well, you had black Greeks, particularly in Athens. And in the movie 300, you didn't see any black people in that movie because they don't want you to know the history that a majority of those 300 soldiers, Greek soldiers that were from Athens, were also black. Or you had a presence of some black Greeks that were involved in those various battles at that time. Even when it comes to Hannibal, who would conquer places with elephants, and he came close to conquering China and their Great Wall, they never give that brother any credit. So this is going to be a long video. I've been talking for about 21 minutes right now, folks. This is going to be a powerful video that you're about to see. I want you to sit back, get your pop your popcorn if you haven't already popped popcorn listening to me right now. Enjoy the video. Have an open mind. Once again, I'm going to remind everybody, this video is speaking upon the fact that all these different religions, particularly the Bible, Christianity, is nothing but forms of African spirituality in which Europeans have chopped it up, changed the stories around. When you look at the story of Ra and the story of Isis, all of that is African spirituality, and they use those stories within the Bible. They just change the names of the characters. They change everything around, but it's African spirituality. We have to understand how we are deceived in European culture, in American society, by not only religion, but by history being twisted and misused to make a knave for fools. So everybody out there, this is Information Man. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'm getting ready to pop on out of here while y'all enjoy. I want y'all to enjoy this presentation. I think y'all gonna love it. So let me get on out here so I can watch the presentation with you. Thank you, everybody. Peace.
This is the sun. As far back as 10,000 BC, history is abundant with carvings and writings reflecting people's respect and adoration for this object. And it is simple to understand why, as every morning the sun would rise, bringing vision, warmth, and security, saving man from the cold blind predator-filled darkness of night. Without it, the cultures understood, the crops would not grow, and life on the planet would not survive. These realities made the sun the most adored object of all time. Likewise, they were also very aware of the stars. The tracking of the stars allowed them to recognize and anticipate events which occurred over long periods of time, such as eclipses and full moons. They in turn catalogued celestial groups into what we know today as constellations. This is the cross of the Zodiac, one of the oldest conceptual images in human history. It reflects the sun as it figuratively passes through the 12 major constellations over the course of a year. It also reflects the 12 months of the year, the 4 seasons and the solstices and equinoxes. The term zodiac relates to the fact that constellations were anthropomorphized, or personified as figures or animals. In other words, the early civilizations did not just follow the sun and stars, they personified them with elaborate myths involving their movements and relationships. The sun, with its life-giving and saving qualities, was personified as a representative of the unseen creator or God, God's Son, the light of the world, the savior of humankind. Likewise, the 12 constellations represented places of travel for God's Son and were identified by names, usually representing elements of nature that happened during that period of time. For example, Aquarius, the water bearer, who brings the spring rains. This is Horus. He is the sun god of Egypt of around 3000 BC. He is the sun, anthropomorphized. And his life is a series of allegorical myths involving the sun's movement in the sky. From the ancient hieroglyphics in Egypt, we know much about this solar messiah. For instance, Horus, being the sun, or the light, had an enemy known as Set. And Set was the personification of the darkness or night, and, metaphorically speaking, every morning Horus would win the battle against Set, while in the evening, Set would conquer Horus and send him into the underworld. It is important to note that dark versus light or good versus evil is one of the most ubiquitous mythological dualities ever known and is still expressed on many levels to this day. Broadly speaking, the story of Horus is as follows. Horus was born on December 25th of the Virgin Isis Mary. His birth was accompanied by a star in the east, and upon his birth he was adored by 3 kings. At the age of 12, he was a prodigal child teacher, and at the age of 30 he was baptized by a figure known as Anup and thus began his ministry. Horus had 12 disciples he traveled about with, performing miracles such as healing the sick and walking on water. Horus was known by many gestural names such as the Truth, the Light, God's Anointed Son, the Good Shepherd, the Lamb of God, and many others. After being betrayed by Typhon, Horus was crucified, buried for 3 days, and thus, resurrected. These attributes of Horus, whether original or not, seem to permeate many cultures of the world, for many other gods are found to have the same general mythological structure. Tammis of Sumeria, born of the Virgin Semiramis on December 25th, worshipped as Lord and Savior. He was also the child, the heroic lord, the sentinel, the healer. He is mocked and humiliated, killed by a boar, descended into the underworld and is miraculously raised from the dead for the salvation of mankind. Attis of Phrygia, born of the Virgin Nana on December 25th, crucified, placed in a tomb and after 3 days, was resurrected. Krishna, of India, born of a miraculous conception to Devaki, with a star in the east signaling his coming, he performed miracles with his disciples, and upon his death was resurrected. Dionysus of Greece, born of a virgin on December 25th, was a traveling teacher who performed miracles such as turning water into wine. He was referred to as the King of Kings, God's only begotten Son, the Alpha and Omega, and many others, and upon his death, he was resurrected. Mithra of Persia, born of a virgin on December 25th, he had 12 disciples and performed miracles, and upon his death was buried for 3 days and thus resurrected. He was also referred to as the Truth, the Light, and many others. Interestingly, the sacred day of worship of Mithra was Sunday. The fact of the matter is there are numerous saviors, from different periods, from all over the world, which subscribe to these general characteristics. The question remains, why these attributes? Why the virgin birth on December 25th? Why dead for 3 days and the inevitable resurrection? Why 12 disciples or followers? To find out, let's examine the most recent of the solar messiahs. Jesus Christ was born of the Virgin Mary on December 25th in Bethlehem. His birth was announced by a star in the east, which 3 kings or magi followed to locate and adore the new Savior. He was a child teacher at 12, at the age of 30 he was baptized by John the Baptist, and thus began his ministry. Jesus had 12 disciples which he traveled about with, performing miracles such as healing the sick, walking on water, raising the dead. He was also known as the King of Kings, the Son of God, the Light of the World, the Alpha and Omega, the Lamb of God, and many, many others. After being betrayed by his disciple Judas and sold for 30 pieces of silver, he was crucified, placed in a tomb, and after 3 days was resurrected and ascended into heaven. First of all, the birth sequence is completely astrological. The star in the east is Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, which, on December 24th, aligns with the 3 brightest stars in Orion's belt. These 3 bright stars in Orion's belt are called today what they were called in ancient times, the 3 kings. The 3 kings and the brightest star, Sirius, all point to the place of the sunrise on December 25th. This is why the 3 kings follow the star in the east, in order to locate the sunrise, the birth of the sun. The Virgin Mary is the constellation Virgo, also known as Virgo the Virgin. Virgo is also referred to as the house of bread. And the representation of Virgo is a virgin holding a sheaf of wheat. This house of bread and its symbol of wheat represent August and September, the time of harvest. In turn, Bethlehem, in fact, literally translates to house of bread. Bethlehem is thus a reference to the constellation Virgo, a place in the sky, not on earth. There is another very interesting phenomenon that occurs around December 25th, or the winter solstice. From the summer solstice to the winter solstice, the days become shorter and colder. And from the perspective of the northern hemisphere, the sun appears to move south and get smaller and more scarce. The shortening of the days and the expiration of the crops when approaching the winter solstice symbolized the process of death to the ancients. It was the death of the sun. And by December 22nd, the sun's demise was fully realized, for the sun, having moved south continually for 6 months, makes it to its lowest point in the sky. Here a curious thing occurs: the sun stops moving south, at least perceivably, for 3 days. And during this 3-day pause, the sun resides in the vicinity of the Southern Cross, or Crux, Australis, constellation. And after this time on December 25th, the sun moves 1 degree, this time north, foreshadowing longer days, warmth, and spring. And thus it was said, the sun died on the cross, was dead for 3 days, only to be resurrected or born again. This is why Jesus and numerous other sun gods share the crucifixion, 3-day death, and resurrection concept. It is the sun's transition period before it shifts its direction back into the northern hemisphere, bringing spring, and thus salvation. However, they did not celebrate the resurrection of the sun until the spring equinox, or Easter. This is because at the spring equinox, the sun officially overpowers the evil darkness, as daytime thereafter becomes longer in duration than the night. And the revitalizing conditions of spring emerge. It must also be noted, in the celestial mythos, Judas is the backbiter, or Scorpio, representing the time of year when the sun becomes weakened. In the Egyptian version, Horus is stung by the scorpion, that is, the heat of the sun is rendered weak by the cold of winter. Furthermore, Judas's betrayal of Jesus for 30 pieces of silver correspondingly lays in the lunisolar mythos. The 30 pieces of silver represent the 30 days of lunation or the cycle period of the moon. Likewise, in the Gospel tale, Jesus is pierced in the side with a spear while hanging on the cross. The side wounding of the sacred king victim is a widespread custom. In the sun god mythos, The side wounding also represents the annual weakening of the sun, in the sign of Sagittarius, the archer, at the approach of the winter solstice. Now, probably the most obvious of all the astrological symbolism around Jesus regards the 12 disciples. They are simply the 12 constellations of the Zodiac, which Jesus, being the sun, travels about with. In fact, the number 12 is replete throughout the Bible. Coming back to the cross of the Zodiac, the figurative life of the sun, this was not just an artistic expression or tool to track the sun's movements. It was also a pagan spiritual symbol, the shorthand of which looked like this. This is not a symbol of Christianity. It is a pagan adaptation of the cross of the Zodiac. This is why Jesus in earlier cult art is always shown with his head on the cross, for Jesus is the Son of God, the light of the world, the risen Savior, who will come again, as it does every morning, the glory of God who defends against the works of darkness, as he is born again every morning, and can be seen coming in the clouds, up in heaven, with his crown of thorns, or sun rays. Now, of the many astronomical metaphors in the Bible, one of the most important has to do with the ages. Throughout the scriptures there are numerous references to the age. In order to understand this, we need to be familiar with the phenomenon known as the precession of the equinoxes. The ancient Egyptians along with cultures long before them recognized that approximately every 2,150 years the sunrise on the morning of the spring equinox would occur at a different sign of the zodiac. This has to do with the slow angular wobble that the Earth maintains as it rotates on its axis. It is called a precession because the constellations go backwards, rather than through the normal yearly cycle. The amount of time that it takes for the precession to go through all 12 signs is roughly 25,765 years. This is also called the Great Year, and ancient societies were very aware of this. They referred to each 2,150-year period as an age. From 4,300 BC to 2,150 BC, it was the age of Taurus, the bull. From 2150 BC to 1 AD, it was the age of Aries, the ram, and from 1 AD to 2150 AD, it is the age of Pisces, the age we are still in to this day. And in and around 2150, we will enter the new age, the age of Aquarius. Now, the Bible reflects, broadly speaking, a symbolic movement through 3 ages, while foreshadowing a 4th. In the Old Testament, when Moses comes down Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments, he is very upset to see his people worshipping a golden bull calf. In fact, he shattered the stone tablets and instructed his people to kill each other in order to purify themselves. Most biblical scholars would attribute this anger to the fact that the Israelites were worshipping a false idol, or something to that effect. The reality is the golden bull is Taurus the bull, and Moses represents the new age of Aries the ram. This is why Jews even today still blow the ram's horn. Moses represents the new age of Aries. And upon the new age, everyone must shed the old age. Other deities mark these transitions as well, such as Mithra, a pre-Christian god who kills the bull, in the same symbology. Now, Jesus is the figure who ushers in the age following Aries, the age of Pisces or the 2 fish. Fish symbolism is very abundant in the New Testament. Jesus feeds 5,000 people with bread and 2 fish. When he begins his ministry walking along Galilee, he befriends 2 fishermen, who follow him. And I think we've all seen the Jesus fish on the backs of people's cars. Little do they know what it actually means. It is a pagan astrological symbolism for the sun's kingdom during the age of Pisces. Also, Jesus' assumed birth date is essentially the start of this age. At Luke 22:10, when Jesus is asked by his disciples where the last Passover will be, Jesus replied, "Behold, when ye are entered into the city, there shall a man meet you bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he entereth in." This scripture is by far one of the most revealing of all the astrological references. The man bearing a pitcher of water is Aquarius, the water bearer, who is always pictured as a man pouring out a pitcher of water. He represents the age after Pisces, and when the sun, God's Son, leaves the age of Pisces, Jesus, it will go into the house of Aquarius, as Aquarius follows Pisces in the precession of the Equinoxes. All Jesus is saying is that after the age of Pisces will come the age of Aquarius. Now, we have all heard about the end times and the end of the world. The cartoonish depictions in the book of Revelation aside, a main source of this idea comes from Matthew 28:20, where Jesus says, "I will be with you even to the end of the world." However, in the King James Version, world is a mistranslation, among many mistranslations. The actual word being used is eon, which means age. I will be with you even to the end of the age. Which is true, as Jesus' solar personification will end when the sun enters the age of Aquarius. The entire concept of end times and the end of the world is a misinterpreted astrological allegory. Let's tell that to the approximately 100 million people in America who believe the end of the world is coming. Furthermore, the character of Jesus, being a literary and astrological hybrid, is most explicitly a plagiarization of the Egyptian sun god Horus. For example, inscribed about 3,500 years ago, on the walls of the Temple of Luxor in Egypt are images of the Annunciation, the miracle conception, the birth, and the adoration of Horus. The images begin with Thoth, announcing to the Virgin Isis that she will conceive Horus, then Neph the Holy Ghost impregnating the Virgin, and then the virgin birth and the adoration. This is exactly the story of Jesus' miracle conception. In fact, the literary similarities between the Egyptian religion and the Christian religion are staggering. And the plagiarism is continuous. The story of Noah and Noah's Ark is taken directly from tradition. The concept of a great flood is ubiquitous throughout the ancient world, with over 200 cited claims in different periods and times. However, one need look no further for a pre-Christian source than the Epic of Gilgamesh, written in 2600 BC. This story talks of a great flood commanded by God, an ark with saved animals upon it, and even the release and return of a dove, all held in common with the biblical story, among many other similarities. And then there is the plagiarized story of Moses. Upon Moses' birth, it is said that he was placed in a reed basket and set adrift in a river in order to avoid infanticide. He was later rescued by a daughter of royalty and raised by her as a prince. This baby in a basket story was lifted directly from the myth of Sargon of Akkad of around 2250 BC. Sargon was born, placed in a reed basket in order to avoid infanticide, and set adrift in a river. He was in turn rescued and raised by Aki, a royal midwife. Furthermore, Moses is known as the lawgiver, the giver of the Ten Commandments, the Mosaic Law. However, the idea of a law being passed from God to a prophet up on a mountain is also a very old motif. Moses is just another lawgiver in a long line of lawgivers in mythological history. In India, Manu was the great lawgiver. In Crete, Minos ascended Mount Dicta, where Zeus gave him the sacred laws. While in Egypt there was Moses, who carried stone tablets and upon them the laws of God were written. Manu, Minos, Moses, Moses. And as far as the Ten Commandments, they are taken outright from spell 125 of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. What the Book of the Dead phrased "I have not stolen" became "Thou shalt not steal," I have not killed became "Thou shalt not kill," I have not told lies became "Thou shalt not bear false witness," and so forth. In fact, the Egyptian religion is likely the primary foundational basis for the Judeo-Christian theology. Baptism, afterlife, final judgment, virgin birth, death and resurrection, crucifixion, the Ark of the Covenant, circumcision, saviors, Holy Communion, the Great Flood, Easter, Christmas, Passover, and many more, are all attributes of Egyptian ideas, long predating Christianity and Judaism. Justin Martyr, one of the first Christian historians and defenders, wrote, "When we say that he, Jesus Christ, our teacher, was produced without sexual union, was crucified and died, and rose again, and ascended into heaven, we propound nothing different from what you believe regarding those who you esteem sons of Jupiter." In a different writing, Justin Martyr said he was born of a virgin. Accept this in common with what you believe of Perseus. It's obvious that Justin and other early Christians knew how similar Christianity was to the pagan religions. However, Justin had a solution. As far as he was concerned, the devil did it. The devil had the foresight to come before Christ and create his characteristics in the pagan world.
Fundamentalist Christianity. Fascinating. These people actually believe the world is 12,000 years old. Swear to God. I actually asked one of these guys, okay, dinosaur fossils. He says, dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith. I think God put you here to test my faith, dude.
The Bible is nothing more than an astro-theological literary hybrid, just like nearly all religious myths before it. In fact, the aspect of transference of one character's attributes to a new character can be found within the book itself. In the Old Testament there's the story of Joseph. Joseph was a prototype for Jesus. Joseph was born of a miracle birth. Jesus was born of miracle birth. Joseph was of 12 brothers. Jesus had 12 disciples. Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Brother Judas suggests the sale of Joseph. Disciple Judas suggests the sale of Jesus. Joseph began his work at the age of 30. Jesus began his work at the age of 30. The parallels go on and on. Furthermore, is there any non-biblical historical evidence of any person living with the name Jesus, the son of Mary, who traveled about with 12 followers, healing people and the like? There are numerous historians who lived in and around the Mediterranean either during or soon after the assumed life of Jesus. How many of these historians document this figure? Not one. However, to be fair, that doesn't mean defenders of the historical Jesus haven't claimed the contrary. 4 historians are typically referenced to justify Jesus' existence: Pliny the Younger, Suetonius, Tacitus are the first 3. Each one of their entries consists of only a few sentences at best and only refer to Christus or the Christ, which in fact is not named but a title. It means the Anointed One. The 4th source is Josephus, and this source has been proven to be a forgery for hundreds of years. Sadly, it is still cited as truth. You would think that a guy who rose from the dead and ascended into heaven for all eyes to see and performed the wealth of miracles acclaimed to him would have made it into the historical record. He didn't, because once the evidence is weighed, there are very high odds that the figure known as Jesus did not even exist. The Christian religion is a parody on the worship of the sun, in which they put a man whom they call Christ in place of the sun, and pay him the same adoration which was originally paid to the sun. In fact, the words holy and Bible translates directly to the definition of sun book. The word holy is but a mock solemn utterance of the ancient Phoenician word heli, from whence formed the Greek word heli or helios, that is the sun. The Middle English word Bible, via Old French from ecclesiastical Latin, biblia, from Greek biblia, books, from Biblian book, originally a diminutive of biblos meaning papyrus scroll, of Semitic origin. Hence, Heli Biblos equals Helios Biblia equals Holy Bible equals Sun Book.
We find that Christianity was in fact nothing more than a Roman story, developed politically.
The reality is, Jesus was the solar deity of the Gnostic Christian sect, and like all other pagan gods, he was a mythical figure. It was the political establishment that sought to historicize the Jesus figure for social control. In 325 AD, in Rome, Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea. It was during this meeting that the politically motivated Christian doctrines were established, and thus began a long history of religious bloodshed and spiritual fraud. And for over the next 1,000 years, the Vatican maintained a political stranglehold on all of Europe, leading to such joyous periods as the Dark Ages, along with enlightening events such as the Crusades and the Inquisition. Christianity, along with all other related theologies, is an historical fraud. These religions now serve to detach the species from the natural world and likewise each other. They support blind submission to authority. They reduce human responsibility to the effect that God controls everything, and in turn awful crimes can be justified in the name of a divine pursuit. And most critically, it empowers the political establishments, who have been using the myth to manipulate and control societies. The religious myth is the most powerful device ever created, and serves as the psychological soil upon which other myths can flourish.
It's the man with the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. It's the man with the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. It's the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info. We got the info. Whatever you wanna know, come join the man with the info show. It's the info man. You can call him information info man. Kicking knowledge all over this nation. Win, lose, or draw. You can bring your hate team, but if you want to win, please don't bring your debate team. We talking Japanese shogun, Aztecs, old mix, and African dogun.